playground. Hooray!
Hey, it's Jeff Zito, and welcome to another episode of Celebrity Jobber, where we talk to some people that you might know and find out if it wasn't for their big break, what would they be doing for an occupation? Famous people are one big break away from being a normal person. Well, it came up a few weeks ago that I would have the opportunity to speak with legendary comedian Stephen Wright. I definitely had a few things on my mind. Knowing Stephen Wright's comedy, I was wondering if this interview would take about 3 or 4 minutes because of the one-word answers I'd receive. If you're not familiar with Stephen Wright's comedy, well, check some of this out.
I'm writing a book. I have the page numbers done. Now I just have to fill in the rest. I wrote a song, too, but I can't read music, so I don't know what it is. Sometimes I turn the radio on. I say, I think I might have written that.
Wow, this guy's an enigma. I really don't know a whole lot about him. Is that just a character on stage, or is that the real person? If it wasn't for his big break, what would this guy end up doing for an occupation? Well, we're about to find out the answers to all of those questions. Our guest here on Celebrity Jobber, legendary comedian Stephen Wright.
How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
You know, I was wondering, I've never spoke to you before. I'm a big fan of your comedy. And
thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. But, I was wondering, I was like, would I be speaking to Stephen Wright, the guy on stage? Am I going to be speaking to Stephen Wright, the person? I compare it like a lot to wrestling, if you're a fan of wrestling. Okay, so you know what I mean then.
No, I don't. I don't know what you mean. I don't know how you perceive wrestling. I saw it the other night for about 15 minutes. I never watch it. I don't know. Those guys, it's like a cartoon. So are you saying when they're not there, then they're just like regular guys when they're out of there, you mean?
Well, sometimes like when you get to do an interview with a wrestler, you're either getting like, what's going on, brother? Or you're getting the real person, like that's not in character. So I was thinking to myself, who am I going to get? Am I going to get the Stephen Wright that reads music and listens to books on tape? Or am I going to get Stephen Wright, the real guy? So I think I got the real guy. So that's pretty cool.
You did. The other guys. Yeah.
So, do people ever, when you meet people for the first time, do they seem awkward with, meeting you because of your stage persona?
Sometimes they're so used to me saying something, some insane joke, that then when I'm just saying, can you tell me where the shirts are? They might just they might be a little hesitancy. That doesn't happen very often.
All right. Well, I'm again big fan of yours. Born in Boston or around Boston. Are you a big Red Sox fan? Because over the years, I've seen you wearing Red Sox hats. I've even seen you wear Orioles hats. Is that true?
I've worn Orioles hats and I've worn St. Louis Cardinals hats. Nothing to do with the team. I just like the logo.
Oh, okay. So more of a Red Sox fan, not a baseball fan?
I used to have a vintage St. Louis hat, like from a replica of 1942, I think.
Right.
It was the same bird and everything, but it was just different.
Right.
Well, what did you ask me about?
Are you just a fan of baseball in general, or the Red Sox are your team, obviously?
Red Sox are my team, and they were horrible this year, but I still watched some of it. I checked in with the scores, but I would watch an inning or two, even though they sucked. I don't care. And as far as overall baseball, I've been watching all the playoffs in both leagues because I love the tension of the playoffs.
And I know that you hate the Yankees probably. I'm a Yankees fan, and I would imagine it was easier being a Red Sox fan this year than it was being a Yankees fan with all the hype and the greatest team, and then, they sucked so bad during the end of the season, and then it ended like it ended. It probably put a smile on your face.
No. Are you from New York?
I'm from New Jersey, yeah.
So you're following the Yankees your whole life, right?
Whole life, yeah.
So I used to live in New York in the mid-'80s for 5 years to early '90s, and I'd be walking around with a Red Sox hat. And the Yankees, I don't hate the Yankees. I know you're just saying you hate the Yankees. I can't care enough to hate some baseball team.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So what would happen is I'd be walking down the street and some Yankee fan, oh, Boston, yeah, Boston. And I would say, hey, wait a minute. I would say the Yankees have won more championships than any other team in any other sport combined. They are the most winning baseball team and sports team. So I admire the Yankees. And they'd just be standing there like with their mouth open because it's like, what are they going to say? I mean, I just complimented them and I froze them with compliments.
Yeah. I feel the same way, too. I don't hate the Red Sox. I mean, I love the rivalry. And when we're playing each other, I want to win. But, I'm not the guy that hates I don't hate the team so bad that anybody you play, I'm rooting for you. That's not my thing either. Because, again, I guess I don't care as much either.
Who's the Yankees playing?
The Yankees just got swept against Houston.
Yeah, so I'm watching it, and I lived there, as I said, and part of me wanted the Yankees to not win because of the rival. Another part of me wanted them to win because I have a connection to New York.
Right.
I have no connection to Houston at all. So even though they're the rival team, they're still in your, like, if it was a big ship, it was a lifeboat. We're all in the same area of a lifeboat with these
right
in the Northeast.
Stephen, from Boston, you grew up in Boston, you graduated from Emerson College and immediately went into stand-up. And what got me was I'm a fan of comedy, so I know about comedy clubs and guys who own comedy clubs and, what a weird world that is. But when I found out that you got did your first gigs at the Ding Ho Comedy Club, I immediately was intrigued, and I said, well, I've never been to this Ding Ho Comedy Club. Could you explain what that was like earlier in your career?
Yeah, so when I exactly started, the Comedy Connection was in Boston. That was the first club. And then shortly after that, like within a year, another club opened up in Cambridge called the Ding Ho Comedy Club. So the back of it was a Chinese restaurant, and the front was a stage and tables and a bar. It was music. Then they switched to folk music. Barry Crimmins, one of my comedy friends, doing it into comedy. So we had the Comedy Connection and the Ding Ho Comedy Club. That's what we would do. That's where we were all learning how to do it. But the Ding Ho changed my life because someone wrote an article about it, its writer, because it was a weird combination, like You're Intrigued. They wrote an article. And for some reason, it went in the L.A. Times. And one of the producers from The Tonight Show, Peter Lustelli, he saw the article. And then, like, within a year later, he went on a summer trip to look at colleges because his two kids were getting out of high school. They were going to Massachusetts, then to New York. So when he went to Massachusetts, he remembered that article. So he called the club up. And he said he was going to come in and watch. And he did. He watched some comedians, and he saw me. And then 2 weeks later, I was on The Tonight Show.
Wow. So do you consider that Tonight Show gig your first big break?
That is my first big break, and it's still my favorite show business thing.
Really?
That first Tonight Show, yep. It changed my life.
It changed your life. How so? Because of the exposure or Johnny Carson and what he did for comedians? How did it change your life?
because I started watching The Tonight Show when I was about 15, 16, and seeing Johnny Carson, seeing these comedians. I'd never seen comedians. So now I'm seeing Robert Klein, David Brenner, and George Carlin, and Richard Pryor, and I'm thinking, wow, look at these guys coming out. And then we sit down and talk to Johnny. So that's when I got it in my head. It was my fantasy. So then when I actually did it in 1982, it was like a fairy tale.
Wow. Do you ever think, Steven, if it wasn't for that break, like if it wasn't, like, do you ever just sit back and think, if it wasn't for that moment and that big break that you got being on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, you ever think about what your life might be like now? What do you think would you be a comedian? What would you be doing?
I don't know, but I know how lucky all that lining up, the combination of the Chinese restaurant, the comedy, then the woman writes the article, then it's in the LA Times, then he goes, looks at colleges, all these weird things lined up by accident. So I don't know, maybe I would have eventually gone on TV anyway, but I don't know really what would have happened.
What was your major in college?
I was majoring in mass communication and then focused on radio. Because I thought I could be funny on the radio, maybe. That was like my backup. Like if stand-up didn't really happen, I thought maybe I could be a guy, making stuff up on the radio.
Well, let me tell you something. Thank God that didn't happen, because you're talking to one of those guys that was not his backup, but his real thing. And it's
congratulations.
Well, yeah, well,
I'm serious. If that was your real thing and now you've been doing it, I'm congratulating you. That's great.
But I think I had delusions of grandeur a little bit. It was different, back when I first started 20 some odd years ago. And fast forward to now, it's a little different. And I still remember those good times, and it was a lot of fun. But I'm just saying, for you, man, I'm really happy that you didn't have to fall into your backup plan of radio, which basically mass communications. That's what you're doing. And I kind of knew that without reading that or speaking to you. I kind of knew that.
Knew what? I didn't follow. You knew what?
I knew that you had some kind of love for radio.
Oh, interesting.
And the reason that I knew that, or I inferred that, was because, you were on WKRP in Cincinnati.
No, I was never on that.
You weren't on WKRP?
People bring it up over the years. I don't know where. Obviously, it's written in something somewhere, but I was never on there.
Well, I do know that you were on Reservoir Dogs, because I've heard you in Reservoir Dogs as the DJ.
Oh yeah.
So,
no, I was on Reservoir Dogs. That's probably why. And then, even though the other thing didn't really happen, you have me in your head in some category of being on the radio.
I did.
Reservoir Dogs. Think back then, in order to just say whatever you wanted, you could be a stand-up comedian. Or the other thing was you could just say whatever you wanted on the radio, because I didn't know how the guidelines. I thought you could just do anything you wanted on the radio. And then I learned you had to do this and then this amount of time and then play a commercial and then this. But at the time, I thought, well, both things, you just make stuff up.
Right.
Comedians or guys on the radio. So they had a similarity.
Correct when it comes to like the big players in radio, but there's only a few Howard Sterns and those kind of guys. The rest of us, journeyman jobbers, have to talk up the records and say something clever in less than 15 seconds, which is probably another reason that I would think that you would be great at radio, because, your type of comedy is quick. I mean, do you have any idea how many jokes you have in a set? Because your style of comedy is, quick one-liners. They're not long stories. How many jokes in a set?
Well, I do the show I do was 85 minutes long, and when I would go on TV to do a stand-up appearance on Johnny Carson or other shows, 5 minutes was about 22 jokes.
Wow. That's a lot of material.
Yeah. and it's just short and it's quick, but it's normal to me. That's how I do it.
That's how you do it. So are you constantly writing? Are you sitting here right now saying like, this dope, I'm going to do a quick one line here. Are you just constantly writing in your brain?
You know, every performer artist reacts from the world. I mean, reacting to the world. So I don't get up and try to make jokes, but just going through my day, I'll see a sign, or I'll overhear a word or something, or I'll read, something about a helicopter, and then maybe I'm thinking about a helicopter. I don't try to make the jokes up, as I'm saying. These things present themselves, and then it just sparks something in my head. Oh, this could mean this and that instead of that, So, but when you wake up, by the time you wake up and go to sleep, but everyone, there's thousands of pieces of information go past your head, and some of them occasionally, like they could be jokes.
Wow, you're just gifted. It's a gift, because this kind of thing, when you're doing 85 minutes and you're having, 200 and some odd different jokes, I mean, that seems like it would be a lifetime for somebody to come up with that material, but you just kind of go throughout your day and it comes to you. So, wow, it's pretty incredible. I guess I kind of see how you've been doing this for a long time. I kind of see how come you're still doing it.
Yes, it's fun. I love being in front of the audience. They're like my friends. I don't know their actual names, but it's like hanging out with your friends. And I love making the stuff up. It's like playing. It's like almost, it's childish. Rather than with finger paints or something, I'm just moving words around. It's very playful. And and I think even if for some reason they said you can't think of any more jokes, you'll be under arrest. I couldn't stop I couldn't stop my brain.
Oh,
I
man.
wouldn't write them down. They wouldn't know, but they would still be.
They'd still be there. Man, it's amazing. What do you do outside of work? I would imagine you have some hobbies. You told me you love the Red Sox. You like to watch baseball, and I heard that you write songs, and like non-comedy songs, like real songs.
Yes, I do that for the fun of it. I play the guitar for years. I have 2 songs on my website now that I just put on there a couple months ago. I like to write the song and then go into a studio and have my friends add all these other instruments. It's just it's more playing.
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to paint. It's like just stuff, like making shit up.
Right. What kind of songs are they? If you had to slap a genre on them, are they rock?
Rockish rock. Yeah.
Okay. And paintings? What kind of paintings do you do? I would just guess abstract. I would just guess that.
Yes. Thank you for the interview. It's not live, is it?
No. I'll chop this up and make myself sound much better.
Okay. Can you send a link of it when you chop it up to Pam, the Complicity woman, and I can hear it?
Yeah. Steven, do you have any social media? You don't seem like a social media kind of guy.
No, I don't. I have enough attention from going on stage. I don't need any more attention.
I am surprised to find out, though, that you have a website, StephenWright.com. That was pretty impressive to me. I was like, wow, this guy, he doesn't seem like a website guy either. He's got a website.
Yeah, I've had it for several years, but thank you very much. If you go to the show, come backstage and say hello if you want.
I would love nothing more than that. That would be really great. It would be great to meet you. And Steven, I got to say, I'm really happy that you're not a radio DJ. You're inspiring, to say the least, and I wish you well.
Thank you. I wish you well, too. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Steven.
Good talking to you.
You too, man.
Bye.
Take care. So after talking to Steven, my friend Ted, who actually gave me the idea for the title of this podcast, Celebrity Jobber, because he thought, the word celebrity would make more people want to listen and search for it. And he was right. Ted comes in and he says, so how was Stephen Wright? I was like, you know what? Surprisingly, he was like pretty good. I was, kind of concerned that, his style of stand-up, these one-liners, really short kind of stuff, and he's monotone, and he's like, not really excited when he's on stage. That's his shtick. But anyway, he was like, what was his first job? And I go, oh, shit. I didn't ask. I was so concerned with trying to get this interview to go like, 20, 30 minutes that I was like, holy shit, I forgot to ask the guy what his freaking first job was, which is the whole point of this podcast. Oh my God, what am I going to do? So when I initially set this up with his PR person, which, by the way, he said, can you send this to my PR person? Because, I know that you kind of suck and I want to hear how bad you make me sound. That's probably what was in his mind. I'm thinking to myself, oh my God, what am I going to do? When I set this up with his PR person, she gave me a phone number for me to call Stephen. So I just kind of typed it in my phone and said, well, let's see if this is a cell phone number, because he was breaking up a little bit during the interview. So I kind of figured it was a cell phone. So I texted Stephen Wright, and I said verbatim, hey, Stephen, I hope I'm not bothering you. This is the guy that interviewed you in Tampa, Florida. I forgot my big money question that goes on my podcast. What was your first job? You wouldn't have an extra 1 minute to tell me, would you? And it was hours before I got a response, but I did get a response back. And he said, hey, Jeff, I can't get on the phone right now, but my first job was a paper route, then painting houses. Good talking to you, S. And I was like, wow, okay, pretty cool. If you really look into it, he never had a first job. I'm sure the painting houses was just like kind of side money. And the paper route, of course, was my first job, literally, before I got into the dinner theater. So this guy's plan was to be a stand-up comedian. And you know what? He did it. His backup plan, of course, as he told us, he majored in mass communications in college, which I majored in as well. And look what I turned into, a radio DJ, now doing a podcast. So Stephen Wright could have ended up like me, which I guess is pretty cool, but pretty amazing. His big break, when he got out of college, he started stand-up, and he worked at a half Chinese restaurant, half comedy club, Ding Ho's. And it just so happened that comedy club intrigued somebody, just like it intrigued me. They wrote a story about it. It ended up in the LA Times. The guy that books for The Tonight Show read the story, brought his daughter to some colleges, happened to be in the Massachusetts area, stopped in to that comedy club because he remembered the story. He actually saw Stephen Wright perform, and that was it. He booked him on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And as Stephen said, that not only was his favorite showbiz moment of all time, that moment changed his life. Pretty incredible story. Legendary comedian Stephen Wright. You know, when you're in my shoes and you get a chance to talk to people that you admire, one of the biggest bummers that happens about 25% of the time is those people that you admire don't really connect with you. Just kind of doing this interview to sell some tickets and move on. Man, I was really happy that wasn't the case with Stephen Wright. Trust me, in this business, you're going to get some clunkers. I thought this was going to be one of those, and it wasn't. Really happy about that. Well, thanks for listening. It's Jeff Zito, and tune in next week for another episode of Celebrity Jobber.